Hi guys, and welcome back to the Once You're In, You're In podcast. This is episode 16, I believe. We'll do the usual shit where we just talk, we catch up, and then we've got a fair few decent questions. It's probably going to be a bit of a shorter one, this one, because it's been a bit of a long day. It was starting later than we thought because of.
Why did we start late? Why did we start late?
You're just useless, mate. So yeah, we'll try and get it done in about 45 minutes. So yeah, how are you getting on, mate?
All good, mate. Everything moving along swimmingly. Under 10 weeks out now, which is scary. Few changes and tweaks have gone in. Doing cardio now every day bar my lower sessions, so it's 20 minutes per week. 4 times per week now, and then 40 minutes, 3 times per week at 20, and then 3 times, I can't think, prep's got to me already, 3 times at 40 minutes. So it's a decent amount of cardio. Tour de France is on the cards for the back end of this year. EPO is in. Is EPO used by cyclists? There's some performance enhancing. Probably. Yeah, beta blockers, that's not it. There's some things that can enhance endurance. I think Cardarine, that's what people use. That was like, I think in test subjects, it gave rats cancer. And that's what I'm going to be utilising. I'm going to be utilising Cardarine just for the likelihood of cancer being high. My endurance my endurance is going to be fantastic. So, yeah, all good. Cardio is quite high, but to be fair, I quite enjoy it on my training days. My rest days, it's a bit of a ball ache. It's a bit of a slog, but I think that's going to be expected. If I'm honest, we then have nutrition. I'm actually taking out my bagels from tomorrow, mate.
Right.
3 crumpets are in instead, so pretty much it's like 22 carb variants and then like I think a 5 protein kind of detriment. So if you were to work that out, it's around like the 112 115 cal marker. So yeah, a little bit of a change in nutrition, and then likewise a bit of a change to expenditure. I'm almost viewing this next couple of weeks, and this is literally what I've been doing for the last couple, and literally since 16 weeks out, and it seems to have worked quite well. So basically, I go through periods of just being a little bit more aggressive, and then holding, and then a little bit more aggressive, and then holding, and then just going from there. So like I said to you, like the difference visually from like week 16 and 12 was quite it was significant. It was where I went from being fat to being less fat and not that fat. So, and that was a fair few changes. And from weeks 12 to 10, I kind of rinsed what I could out of the changes that I made. And I feel like from now to probably week 8, I'm going to be a little bit more, aggressive with the changes, then probably hold off, then reassess, and then probably have like a final push for the final 6 weeks. But I did some posing, believe it or not, mate. First time at Warehouse. Yeah, and I had 3 people. 3 people walked in. 3 people commented saying, "Mate, you're looking good," and I was like, "Yeah, cheers, mate." They said I'm looking good. It's confirmed. I'm just looking fantastic. I'm ready. So yeah, I had 3 people who probably were, I'd say, that within the first 3 years of training, and they all said that I was looking good. So therefore, I don't need to diet anymore. So everything seems to be moving forward in the right direction. But yeah, everything's good. Training was mint yesterday. I felt really good. Saturday was awful in the sense of how I feel. It wasn't a bad session. It was just how I felt. I don't know what it was. I said to Sanaya, she came around afterwards, and I said to her in the first 5 minutes of her, not even that, the first line of her coming in, I said, "I feel awful. I don't know why." And then she was like, "Okay." I just felt really bad on Saturday. I finished the session and I just felt awful, just not in it, just off.
I think a lot of it is pressing. Like your pulling and your leg training hasn't really taken a hit at all, has it? Like you've still been able to progress it. I know you on Saturday you didn't feel good anyway, but I think let's say that session was legs, you'd have probably had a better session. But it's because you start off with some heavy presses, and then if they don't go so well, you're already in a bit of a sort of negative mindset from it. Not that impacts your training, but subconsciously it does. If you have a couple of poor movements where you felt the Smith and you were like, "Fucking hell, it feels heavy." If that felt light, you'd have been like, "Oh, I feel mint today." That first initial sort of thought and feeling can dictate a session. Even if you don't want it to. Because we'll say to clients all the time, don't let that impact your training. Don't let the first movement impact the whole session. But it can do a lot of the time, can't it?
Yeah, and I think as well, not to be too I don't know how to word this without sounding like a bell end, but it's more so the people. For example, Comran was there, and I Comran sound, but when you look up and I just want to check, like, you know, and you almost feel like you either have eyes on you, or you need to talk to somebody, or you need to, like, someone will just say something to you. And I think it was like the first time that I was like very happy, just like, you probably noticed I wasn't talking. I was just like, I just wanted to kind of get in, not get out. Like, it wasn't where I was like, get me out of the gym. But it was the first session where I felt a bit like, I just can't be asked to talk to people. I don't want to look up and see somebody like going to comment on like a lift that I just did or something. I'd rather just literally people leave me alone. So that was the first time on Saturday. And then I was almost expecting it, thinking, oh, this is going to be how it is now, because like I felt like that plenty of times in the past. But now, like, so Monday it was fine. Like, I finished the session, got home, felt mint. Like, it wasn't where, like, most evenings post workout I feel pretty battered. Where like yesterday after the stiff leg I felt decent. Like, I just felt pretty okay Monday. So it'll be interesting to see how I am like Wednesday, Thursday. But I think that level of inconsistency is normal, is expected. Sometimes you feel really good going into the session, and it's really bad, and you're thinking, God, this is going to be a bit of a poor one already, and then your movements go well and everything feels good, and then you feel mint afterwards. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
It's only going to be more frequent as well now, like over the next, like, what, 9-10 weeks. You're gonna have more of those sessions where you just don't want to talk to people. Like, think how I was in progress works towards the end. Like, everything just was winding me up, like the smallest of things, like I say, just people being there, like asking you questions, even just asking about how your prep's going. Like, people are being nice, but you get so sick of saying the same things and talking to people about the same things, and it's just like, I just want to train and not talk to anyone. Like, the amount of times that, like, I would be doing a movement, or you'd be doing a movement, and someone would come over and talk to us, and I would literally just keep my head down with my headphones on, and you'd be chatting to them, like, so many times in progress work.
It's the other way around this year. Like, it's not as bad, but I said to you, like, you were talking to people and I was like, oh no. But I think that's more, you don't even notice it till you notice it. So, like, for example, like, I don't feel like I'm acting any different, but I can tell, like, just how I am. Like, I'm less, like, I'm just walk around with my head down. And usually I'm quite, not antisocial. I don't come across as like a super approachable. I don't go around smiling, giving everybody thumbs up, saying like, hey mate, like, how are we doing? But yeah, I feel like it's definitely a lot more, just a bit more reserved. And I think, again, that's going to be how it is. It'd be naive of me to assume that I'm going to feel wicked every single session. Like, my rest days are heavy workload wise, and like, but they're at the same time, I can at least chill out in the evenings. I'd be like, right, I can chill out, have some time to myself. Where my training days, it's like flat out from the morning. I get into the gym and I'm mentally fatigued. I'm training, like, my training's really accurate, intense, so it's battering me. But again, like, with where I'm at, I wouldn't swap that for anything. You know, like, it would be like, down.
We've said it loads of times, haven't we? Like, looking at where we are now, sort of in terms of coaching, you know, if we'd have, even a year ago or more, we'd have been like dying to be in that position. So we can't complain when we go into a gym session and we're both like, fucking hell, like, I'm knackered from this morning. Like, we don't really even talk about it. Like, it's just different, isn't it? Like, we are going to be feeling a bit tired. Like, but I think you've got to almost like sort of switch your mindset from work to training. Like, so I think that's quite a big thing that both of us have to do, because otherwise, like, I've done it a few times where, like, I'll go on the way to the gym and I'll do voice notes in the car, and then when I get into the gym, I've still got more to get back to. So, like, I'll be doing my mobility and still getting back to people, and it always just starts the session off in a bit of a poor way. Like,
I have a position where I get to, and I'm like 10 minutes away, and I'm like, right, music on. I'm not turning my phone off, but I'm not going on my WhatsApp. Like, there's
but you say that, but then a lot of the time when you're doing your steps, you'll be getting back to clients. Like, when you're busy, it's difficult, isn't it? Like, when you have those days where you're like, I literally just, I've got so much to get back to. Like, I think it depends on the day. Sometimes I'm like, oh shit, I've got back to everyone and I'm not even setting off yet. Mint. Then I'll drive all the way and I'll be able to listen to music or put a podcast on. Like, and that's nice when I can do that. And I think that does make a difference. Obviously, if you can do that, then generally it will benefit the session, because you can switch from sort of work mode to training mode earlier and be more sort of mentally prepared for it and feel a bit fresher for it. Like, if you're driving to the gym and doing your warm up and everything while sort of still working, you sort of get into your first movement and you're like, oh, right. And it doesn't really feel like that. Like, you know, you're starting the session off in a negative way. But that's something that I think, you know, you have to manage, you have to learn as you get busier.
No, and it's only going to get worse. Like, that's how it's always going to be. Like, for example, I imagine, like, if I'm going to be prepping next year, it's going to be this times 2. Likewise, next time you're prepping, it will be literally
just
the
how
same.
you manage it.
But,
It's
yeah,
just how
exactly.
you manage it. Like,
Yeah.
I think, you know, I remember when we had, like, I'm not going to put out say loads of numbers, but I remember when we had, like, let's say 20 clients, and then we were like worked up to 30, and we were like, mate, 30 is ridiculous. I'm too busy.
Mate, I remember we had the conversation when we were leaving, you know, the private facility, and I remember we were both like talking about numbers, and we were like, oh, I wonder what that's going to be when you get to 40. And it was like we had this like kind of like mental kind of thought, like, oh my god, imagine. And it was where, like, at the time, like, that's kind of obscene and absurd, and we think, oh, I'm really busy. And it was because I think we both had like, and then we had December that was both really good months for us. We both picked up like another like 6 to 8 clients. And then we were like, okay, now we're really, really busy. And then we went into lockdown. I feel like because the last like year since you pretty much finished your show, like, it's been fairly similar for both of us, how like projection's been. So like we've almost not had time to chill out and stop. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and then you mix in like me finishing uni, getting that ticked off, then likewise going literally the second I finish uni, and hand in my disc. I'd already done like a week of prep, and I'm like, right, now I've got the next goal that's 20 weeks away, instead of where I was so focused on getting my dissertation finished and getting uni wrapped up. And it's like, well, I didn't even enjoy it, because by the time I'd finished, I was like, right, next goal, prep. Yeah. And it'll be the same. Like when I get to it in like 10 weeks, it's coming around really quickly. But when I get to it, I'll be like, right, Sam, what's the next goal? Is 2022 by, you know, like there's little things. It's almost where you can't enjoy the moment as well as you want to, but you have to sometimes kind of just take a step back and say, right, chill.
That's the best part of it all. Like I think that's the whole point, that like bodybuilding, even if you don't even have to call it bodybuilding, like even just going to the gym, like even just trying to better yourself, that is the whole sort of, for me anyway, the whole benefit of it all is that you don't have time to sort of overthink things and worry about things. Like, I'm worrying about when my next meal is. I'm worrying about getting back to clients. You know, I'm not worrying about what life is about or when I'm going to die, you know, like not like things that, you know, when people say like, oh, I'm always overthinking things, or they're anxious about things a lot, like generally I don't have time to be thinking about being anxious or anything, because I'm focusing on the next small goal, which is usually when my next meal is, and then going to the gym and then training and then going home and eating and then getting to sleep on time. And it's like those sort of small things. Obviously then you might have bigger goals like a prep and whatever, but I think that's a sort of blessing in disguise, and that's why mentally, you know, it's good to have that, because a lot of people, like we've said before, you know, if you've not got anything else outside of just, let's say, work, like generally you're gonna feel like a lot of the time overwhelmed, anxious, depressed, because you're not doing anything else other than just working and then sitting at home. I think that fact of having goals, and like even like we've said, I don't think we've ever said like, oh, like this month I want to gain more clients, or I'm going to do this to try and gain more clients. Like we just literally do the job day to day and enjoy the job, and then as it progresses and as we get busier, it's great. But we don't even have time to think about marketing strategies, or, you know, when people ask like, oh mate, how do I get more clients? Like every time that my clients speak to me about that, like the clients who are coaches themselves, my answer is always just, you need to be passionate, you need to want to do it, you need to give as much time and effort to your clients as possible. It's never, oh, you need to do this on Instagram, or you need to check your analytics or anything like that. Like, because that can all help. But I think if you're working hard enough sort of with the clients that you've currently got, like, mate, how many clients have you got through just word of mouth? Probably more than you've got through.
I had an application come today off a lad's girlfriend.
Yeah,
you know, like that
probably more than you get through social media. Is through people like recommending you to other people, like, and that's online as well. That's not even like PT, and I sort of get that a bit more, because it's like people can see you in person doing it, and people will be like, oh, I've just finished my session with, and it was great. But with online, to be getting like that amount of referrals just through word of mouth, like you've got to be doing something right. So I think that's sort of what you need to focus on beforehand, before sort of worrying about marketing strategies. And it's like people paying for fucking business coaches before they even sort of actually have any clients, or before they don't sort of actually invest in them. They don't even invest in their own training, their clients' training, their own knowledge. They're just like, oh, how much money can I earn doing this? And it's like, I think it's I think that's the issue with the industry that we're in. But another thing before we go on to the questions, you were just saying then about like you don't have time to sort of live in the moment.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what I was listening to. I think it was a podcast earlier this week, and they were saying about like how at the time you don't realize that it's like one of the best times of your life, or like one of the best memories that you'll ever have. And I think again that's normal, isn't it? Like I was thinking when they were on about it on the podcast, I was thinking about like when me and Shannon were in Egypt. Like when we were in Egypt, I loved it, and I was like, oh, this is great. But now looking back, I was like, that was probably like 2 of the best weeks I've ever had in my life. Like it was that good, and obviously especially with COVID and everything now. But I think it's hard, isn't it, to notice that and notice when the good times are. Like we've said, like about the first lockdown, like when we were training together. Like thinking back to that now, like the memories of that are mint. At the time, we were like, fucking hell, this is shit, because we're having to train in a gym with hardly any equipment, like a tiny room. But we always said at the time, didn't we? We were like, I bet in 5-10 years we'll look back at this time and remember the songs that we played, and remember like the sort of memories of it, and think of it as a good time. So yeah, it's something that I listened to on the podcast, and I was like, it makes sense, doesn't it? You don't realize it at the time.
Yeah, I think that's how it is. Like, firstly, I will say you always look back and you always remember like the good parts. You never really remember the bad parts. Like the thought of like we said before, like you look back at like the World Cups in the past, and you're like, oh my god, that was such a good World Cup. And in reality, like the Euros have gone and been mint. Like it has been where you always look back fondly. You never remember like the downsides. Like you look back when you were a kid, and I remember like the thought of being a kid again, like like being at school sounds mint. I remember like I get up every day and I'd be like, oh god, I have to go to school.
Hated school.
I'd just be waiting, counting down the hours till I finish at 3, and then I could go and play football or whatever, or like go home and play Call of Duty or FIFA with my mates or whatever it's going to be. But again, like I completely agree. Like I think both of us, mate, will look back at, and it's like it's nice to say, because I know we'll look back in 10 years. Like you'll have kids, I won't. So I'll be infertile. You'll have kids, and like I'll be sat around. I'll be uncle. We'll be battered. My joints will be ruined. I'll be 300+ pounds, and I'll be like just an absolute mess. And you'll be sound. You'll be healthy, and we'll be looking back and we'll go, yeah, when we were like, we'll look back at where we were now. We'll go, that was mint. Like we're both healthy. We both have everything in front of us. Like life's in a really good position. And again, you don't look at that and enjoy it in the moment, but it's nice to stay. But at the same time, still shit to do. Like there's still stuff to do that you can't be like.
Stops you from sort of being present. I think it is important though, from time to time. Like every night, like I've said to you, every now and again, like especially if I'm like having a day like on a Sunday, if me and Shannon like go on a walk together or something, and we like sit on a bench and it's nice weather. Like every now and again, like I won't look at my phone and I just relax, and I'm like, this is actually nice. Like, but it's hard to do that. Like you don't realize how sort of rare that you actually do that and actually take a step back. Like you say, like when you go on a walk in the morning, and if you don't go on your phone, or if you just sort of like actually take a minute to realize like sort of what you're doing and where you are and stuff, like it's rare that you actually get to do it. But when you do, you think, oh shit, like I never actually get a chance to do this.
Yeah, no, I agree. But yeah, live chat. That's what it is. To conclude, you didn't really answer. We kind of did. How's training been? Everything, quick one. Everything's in a good spot. Monday, you struggled a little bit yesterday with the heat, didn't you?
I'm a bit ill, to be honest, mate.
Yeah, I saw your readiness. Like I felt awful Saturday, Sunday, like after my session, and then like Sunday I felt rough. Like cardio was slow and sluggish, but I felt fine today. And yesterday I think
part of it's the heat. I don't know whether it's something that I've eaten as well, but like my last couple of days, mate, my digestion's been awful.
Like you mentioned that first thing out the car yesterday, digestion poor. Like you said, don't go in the car. Don't go in the car, Reece. My digestion's been awful.
I don't know. I think it must be to do with the heat. Because I haven't really like thinking about food. Like the only thing I can think of is having rice that was in the fridge that I maybe didn't heat up enough. That's all I can think of. And obviously you can sometimes get issues from that with rice. So I should have really been a bit smarter with that. But I didn't even really think, because I was like, it was still warm, and it had only been in there like a few days. It wasn't, so that I can think it was potentially that. I think maybe that alongside the weather. Like I was saying to you the other day, like yesterday, like I literally feel like I've been overheating for 4 days. And I'm not going to complain about it, because it's the weather. It is what it is. Like everyone's hot, get over it. But I think that's playing a role as well. So like the past like 2 days, yesterday and today, like my digestion's not been great. My appetite's been awful. Bowel movements have been pretty horrendous. But like,
I'm inconsistent with anything, mate. It's annoying. My body weight is so inconsistent based off them. Shocking. Yeah, whenever I diet, my body just seems to hold on to all bits of food. It's really, really inconsistent.
I'm the opposite, mate. I've lost every ounce out of me in the past 2 days.
Yeah, so
I don't know how I didn't shit myself yesterday training. I did really well. I was almost it was almost guaranteed.
Yeah, you're going in.
I didn't have before. I was like, I put money on it. If I could bet on it, like on William Hill before the session, I'd have put money on it, but it didn't happen.
No fucking doubts. That's what you're thinking. No doubts about this. Yeah,
I won't miss. That's what you say all the time. I won't miss. I won't miss.
No. The saying's even if I miss, I can't miss. I love it. It's such a good saying.
Yeah, you put it about what did you put it about? The hack squat, 4 plates for 10. Let's see.
4 plates for 10. Wait, what?
You put about the hack squat after you put like my goal now on this is 4 plates for 10. I won't miss or something like that. When I read it, I was like, let's see.
Mate, 4 plates for 10 for me, considering my hack squat variance.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying, will you get it?
I know, but I like to put stuff like that because it's external pressure, and I like anything that pressures me. Anything that I can go, oh, like I've put my word to it, like because I don't ever put my word to something and not usually get it. Like it's like I don't think I've ever put anything on my Instagram and not had it. So like just putting that externally, it's like right, it's a little bit.
I feel like you have though. I feel like there's a couple of things.
Mate, 4 plates, got it on the flat bench, ticked it off. The 250 RDL, the only thing I didn't get is a 260.
I was going to say that.
That's the only thing that I didn't get. But to be fair, I probably would have got the 260 if my back hadn't gone pop. So like it was almost where I was like, but it's just one of them. But yeah, right. We'll get into the questions.
We've not got long. Let's smash through.
Okay, so I'll start off. I had 2 from a guy called Cam Carey. Good questions, to be fair. He's asked 2 questions. I'll go through one and then go through the other because they're linked in a good way. So he's put, what's the most important thing you've learned so far this prep? And we can both answer it, if I'm honest. If you want to take it up, mate, you prepped last year, so you can kind of go through because I'm still going through the process. So you might be able to offer, like, at least you've gone through a prep, you know?
No, mate, you go.
No advice here. Don't know, mate. Nothing.
Don't know. Sorry, mate. Don't know that one. Don't know the answer to that one. Can we move on?
Yeah, sound all right. Fair enough. Cheers to the question, Cam.
No, go on. You go, and then I'll just touch on it.
Okay, so everyone says routine, and I would agree. However, when you go into a prep with the level of routine that I haven't gained any sense of routine, really. The only switches, instead of doing my dissertation and doing my uni work for 3 hours in the morning from like 7 a.m. till 10, I just do my cardio and I do my steps and I make my food in the day. Like I already used to make my food, but I'm more so I make it so like I don't have to be making it throughout the day as much. That's the only thing I really have changed from a structural standpoint of the day. So when it comes to that, that's usually what most people say, it's the structure, it's the routine. I'm already very structured and routine. Like how I work, I wouldn't be able just to kind of wake up and say, right, I'm not going to do check-ins till 3 p.m. today because I wouldn't be able to get them done. Or if I could, I'd be up till silly time and it would just mess my meals around. So I can't really take too much from that. I've dieted in the past too many times to know. And I would say if I'm going off anything, it's more of a mental game. I think the thought of food is completely psychological. I think the application to training is completely psychological. I think once you beat your mind, you can do really anything regarding a prep, if I'm honest. If you were to tell me that I've got, let's say, to wait till next year to have any food that's different, or 2023, I'd be like, but I'd do it. You know, like it's literally psychological pressures you place on yourself. So if there's anything I've learned from this prep alone, it's not really anything, but what I've learned through the process is it's a lot of the psychological components is massively fabricated by what you hear. And then at the same time, what you think yourself. I think if you can just switch off, get after it on a daily basis, you can live in a sense of routine and you should be pretty much spot on. And as mentioned, training applies to that as well. So like you hear, you're going to diet, you're going to get weaker. No chance. Like if you get switched on, like I've done diets in the past, you've done diets, you were stronger bar pressing pretty much on everything. You know, your hack squats were up from when it started. So yeah, I haven't really learned anything important. I mean, like I've learned in the past that my tendencies towards food are horrible. So for example, if I'm eating my post-workout meal, don't talk to me. I've learned that. Like if I'm making my food, leave me the fuck alone. Like I don't like to be disrupted. But that's like, I already knew that. So it's not where I'm coming into this as a first time prep and I've never dieted to extraneous like levels before. So yeah, what do you recommend?
The difference in it is that you have dieted to being very lean before, so it's not I think that's something that's important. If you are going to prep, you need to at least have dieted before. Like something I did with Sonny, because we'd never dieted together. He'd dieted on his own before, but I'd never actually put him through any form of a diet. So I put him through like a mini cut. It was like the prep before the prep, which is like a term that people have been calling it. But I don't even, it's not necessarily it was obviously you do start prep in a slightly better position. But it was more so to see how they actually react to a diet. Not necessarily a prep, because really a prep is just an extended diet with stepping on stage at the end. That's all. But yeah, I think there's two things that I would say. Like one of them would be more often than not, you don't have as much muscle as you think. Like everyone expects to be as big as they were in the off season when they diet down, but you're going to look a lot smaller. Like you're going to look better obviously out of clothes, but you're going to look a lot smaller and feel a lot smaller. And then the other one would be, don't sort of succumb to the social media bullshit and the fashion side of it, of like, oh, this is so hard, or fucking 10 cal jellies, I've got to have this and that. Like it's all for show. Like in my opinion, it's all about fashion and getting views and likes. And if you act like you're suffering, people find it more enjoyable to watch. Like I guarantee if I'd have done a whole prep series on YouTube suffering so hard and showing all the foods that you can put in to get rid of cravings, etc., I'd have got more traction on it. But realistically, like exactly what you said, I had a routine beforehand. I maintained that routine throughout, and I just ate a bit less, and then I got on stage at the end. Like it's not, and the thing is, this isn't good for me from a business standpoint to tell everyone it's not that exciting, but it's not. It's like when clients are like, oh, I want to prep, I'm like, great, but it's really not a massive change. Like if you can do what you would now normally, if you can nail a routine, the only difference is you'll move a bit more, you'll generally eat a bit less, and you'll do a bit more posing. That is literally it. But everyone's like, oh, it's prep, it's amazing, can't wait for prep.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's my opinion.
No, I agree.
Like some people might feel like that, but I think the people that I don't think they actually do. I think it is for social media.
Yeah, it's for show, and it's like you want to know that you're in the trenches and such. And again, it's it's just fabricated. It's like it's not
pretty much what we were saying earlier. Similar, like the thought of it is more exciting and fun and enjoyable than the actual prep itself. Like I think for you probably feel like, I bet when you were coming into the prep, like you said yourself, like you were never like really looking forward to it or anything like that. But it's almost like, right, oh, I'm prepping, I'm going to start prep at this date. And then I'm 2 weeks from starting prep. And then I'm 1 week from starting prep. And then you start prepping, like, oh, nothing's changed. I'm just eating a bit less. Like that's literally it.
It's funny. I went for a walk with Sanaya, and I literally said, like, word for word, mate, what you said. Like, I started just before. She's behind the Mac now. She's laughing.
Just behind the Mac. So I started, sat behind the Mac. Yeah. Not allowed to sit anywhere else.
No, she's not. She has to stay way away from the camera, not allowed anywhere near it. She's laughing currently. And basically, we went for a walk, and I remember exactly where we were. We're crossing the road. And it's funny that I even remember this. And she said something like, I can't wait to be on prep. And I said, firstly, it's not on prep. I said, it's in prep. I was like, if you actually break it down, you're not on anything. You're into a prep. I was like, the fucking drives me mad when people say on prep. In prep. I saw Matt Jansen put a story about that. And I was like, I agree.
You're in preparation for...
Yeah, you're not on preparation. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense. But anyway, when you're on prep, in prep, she said, I can't wait. I had already started about 2 weeks before, and she was coming up for her. And I literally looked at her, I was like, why? And she's like, she like stalled. I said, but what, actually why? And then I just said, you're literally just going to eat less and move more. And then she went, yeah, but, you know, and I was like, you know what? Like, what is that? And then I think we both agreed. We were like, oh yeah, there's not actually that much to look forward to.
It is. It's the thought of it. It's like anything. Like, I feel like it's the same with most things. Like if we were to go and, let's say we were to, I don't know, go and watch a football match or whatever, like the excitement of it is always better than the actual thing itself. If you go on a night out, the build up of seeing your mates before, so it's always better than the actual thing itself. So I think that's the same with prep. It depends obviously on the result. I feel if you do really well and then obviously you're going to be like happier at the end of it. But I think the actual process itself, like if you're on it beforehand, it's no different. If it's a massive change, then yeah. But I'd almost argue that if it is a massive change, then you shouldn't really be going into a prep anyway.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Right, your question. I'll answer his next one after because it's not actually as well as I read it incorrectly. So I'll go into his next one after. So you go, mate.
Ruben MGGGG. Oh, it's only 2 G's actually. He put HGI, so high GI carbs, important pre-workout, or is it bad? Add fats? Question mark. So yeah, basically, should we have high GI carbs pre-workout? Is it bad? Should we add fats?
Should be add fats. So I remember, mate, I was in Ultraflex Leeds and I read a newspaper. It was one of those, bodybuilding magazines, and it was talking about like high GI, low GI, and that you can add a fat and it will turn it from a high to a low. Because ideally, if you think about it, it slows down the digestion of the said carbohydrate. So in theory, you could say there's like a mechanism, like if you had cereal with a load of dark chocolate, it's going to be slower digesting than if you had just had cereal. Ideally, if we're going actually off literature, it is recommended that you'd want like fast digesting carbohydrates around the workout window in a pre, intra, and post setting. However, most people could agree that, like, let's say ideally pre, you'd want a slower digesting source. I quite like between maybe like 10 and 15 fat from maybe an additional fat source. I wouldn't want to, if let's say you're having oats and you're adding in 10 to 15 grams of fat from dark chocolate that totals out 24, 25 fat, I'd most likely try and keep it maybe 10 grams of actual complete fat source, and then maybe 5 to 8 from the actual like carbohydrate source in itself, because you don't want it where you're having super, like, let's say, quick response to energy through let's say a sugary kind of cereal or something, and then you kind of get into the latter end of your session, you're almost like dwindling and dying out. So I would usually favor a slower digesting carbohydrate source. Post workout, I mean, we want a fast digesting source. That's pretty much going to be the main thought process. You want to get the carbohydrate in and then utilize that as glycogen. So therefore, you want something to, again, digest quickly. So yeah, could you have it pre with like, let's say, a fat source? I mean, you could. Is it going to be optimal? Maybe not. But at the same time, like, if you can get your carbs in, get your carbs in. I think, again, something you're probably overthinking, if I'm honest. Like, I've had cereal as one of my pre-workout meals during the first lockdown was literally Special K. I then had dark chocolate with it. And then, like, I can't remember, I had an additional fat source as well. I actually had a massive bowl, and my post-workout was Cocoa Pops. And it was like, when my food was silly high, but it was easy to get in, and it was like a good amount of calories, and I had just whey in both meals. And is it going to be optimal? No. But I've had periods of time where it was like that. I wouldn't say my sessions were any worse. I wouldn't say my performance was really any worse. Would I do it now? No, but that's that. What do you reckon?
I think it's one of the things that you can massively overanalyze it. Right? And realistically, like, I would argue, just make sure that you've got a sufficient amount of energy post-workout. But also, I think one thing that's worth noting is it depends sort of where you're at, like what phase you're in. So, like, for example, like you, let's say over the next coming weeks, even now, the last thing that you'd want to be doing really is having a lot of high GI carbs pre-workout, because the chances that you'll go hypo during your session is going to be a lot higher than, let's say, me on a lot more carbs with a higher percentage body fat. Like, there's less chance that I'm going to go hypo, even if I didn't eat all morning. I'd probably still be all right going through a session, from the amount of food that I'm on and the food volume that I'm on. So I think as well, it's kind of dependent on the phase that you're in. You can probably get away with it more so when you are on more carbs. You can get away with having more, like, a higher GI carbs pre-workout. Like, for example, at the minute I have pre-workout cookie. There's no chance I'd have that when I'm dieting or even coming out of a show. I've literally only just added them, and I'm 30 odd pounds up, because again, it's sort of one of those things where I would ideally have a majority of my pre-workout as a lower GI carb source. Obviously, then we can look at intra and having a carb powder in your intra workout and how long your sessions are. And that's what I'm saying about you could overanalyze it. But I would generally say if you're in a gaining phase, you're on a lot of food, then I would say you probably got the chance to have a little bit more higher GI carbs in that meal. If you are dieting on less carbs, then generally you're going to want more lower GI carbs in that meal. I would argue that you could probably have a bit of a mix if you're sort of anywhere between those two phases, really. And to be fair, like, even if you're really sort of at the end of a diet or at the end of a gaining phase, like, a slight sort of mix isn't going to be a bad idea. Like, if you think for you, for example, like the chicken and rice meal plus some crumpets and jam, like, obviously you're going to get some higher GI from the jam. Yeah. The crumpets are going to be a little bit higher GI. The rice, even white rice, isn't low GI, but yeah, completely depends on the phase you're in, what digests well with you. We haven't even said that. Like, it doesn't matter if it's high or low GI. If it doesn't digest well with you, then you need to change it. Like, so I would say it's one of those things you can really overanalyze, and you probably don't need to. Just make sure you're eating sufficient amount of calories to give you enough energy and feel good while you train.
Yeah, spot on. Right. Cam's second question. What 5 things has to be 5? Can't be 3, can't be 2. I don't want to do 5. What 5 things could a client do to be a perfect client? Do you want to go one by one?
Okay, I'll go first.
All right. Yeah, you go first. I'm not clever enough to think on like the top of my head.
Communicate.
Go.
Like communicate well. So check in on time.
Oh, don't say that. You can't be going into detail. But
communicate well means like communicate on time. Give me enough detail. Don't send me like stupid messages like that you don't need to send.
Yeah.
Like use Google for the absolute basics. Like sometimes when people message like, mate, how long does it take to cook this? And I'm like, mate, like I literally would just Google that. You know, all I'm going to do is Google it and then tell you the answer that Google's told me. Like, you know what I mean? Like basics like that. So yeah.
Mate, the amount of times I Google or ask my mum, and I'm like, I text her and I'll be like, what's this? And she'll be like, oh yeah, you got to put that in there for 30 minutes. So like, sound right, copy that in. There you go, mate. I have no idea.
But it's just basic. Like, you're not a chef. Like, you know what I mean? You're a coach. You need, you know, you're there to help them with their training. Like, obviously, yeah, you're there to help with nutrition, but not how to cook something. Like, really, that's sort of basic, isn't it? So yeah, communication, I guess, is number 1.
Going to go number 2, honesty. So I'd say a lot of clients, and this is something that I've realized, especially since the gyms have reopened, kind of got to a point where I've devolumed like pretty much the vast majority of individuals like in the last couple of weeks. And a lot of them, I'll highlight Andrew. I think he listens, fantastic listener to the podcast. I think he listens to a few. And like we've literally had to like deload him for a rotation and devolume him for 3 sessions. And it was because he was like pushing on. He was playing rugby when he got back in the gym, and then he stopped playing rugby. So he felt amazing because his like workload came down and his training was the best it's been. His progressions were the best it was. His body weight was coming up. And I heard in one check-in he sent me, and he just seemed a bit negative. And I kind of just said to him in the check-in, I was like, what's up? Like, there's something happening. And I said, like, are you battered? How are you feeling? Like, you kind of skimmed over your training. You didn't want to sound too enthusiastic when your training's been mint. And he kind of was like, yeah, I'm just feeling like a little bit like less motivated about the training. And I was like, right, we'll just deload you. He says he feels far better. And I said to him, like, the vast majority of clients, especially the clientele that we work with, their chance of knowing when they're fatigued is horrendous. They do not know when. Likewise, there's individuals how, for example, I might have a client who's in a fat loss phase. They've dropped 20 pounds. They have a low incline barbell press and a low incline dumbbell press in. Yes, the numbers are going up. The internal feels getting worse each week, but they're thinking, right, I'm just going to soldier on. I don't need to tell Reece this. I don't need to tell him that. Where in reality, there's going to be certain clients that are almost too one-sided, and they tell you everything when it's sometimes like, right, mate, just get a grip, get on with it, it'll be fine. Like, you've only had the movement for 2 weeks. You don't know. Where other people just soldier on, and therefore it might become a long-term issue where you need to make a change. So being honest, saying that applies to if you have a not-planned meal. How many clients have we mentioned where they haven't ticked their macros off for a day, but they'll still put their macros on the sheets that you have them set, and you're like, well, this isn't helpful. Like, if you undereat, put it. If you overeat, put it. Like, little things. So yeah, honesty would be number 2.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Running out now. It's hard, this.
I was going to say trust, because like if you don't, like the amount of times that we've said like someone doesn't really trust what you're trying to help them with or trying to tell them, and then obviously they're usually the clients who don't get the results that they want to get. Like, you know, so often we'll say like obviously like you've had clients who sort of question what you're telling them, and that's fine. Like if they want to question it, that's absolutely fine, but it's how you question things. Like I'll have discussions with clients about things, and I'll sort of say, well, do you think we could do that maybe, or how do you think that would feel? Would that fit into your routine? That's perfect. That's what you need to do with your clients. But if you say to someone like, right, your form on this is not good, you really need to work on improving that, because you're either going to injure yourself, or you're throwing weight around, you need to leave your ego at the door. Like that's another one, like not having an ego as a client. I think that kind of comes in with this trust thing, because if you think you know better than your coach, like already you're not going to get good results. Like if you come to a coach because you want a solution, you want to improve, and then you keep doing what you were doing before, what do you expect? Like you're not going to change if you keep doing what you were doing previously. It's like what I've said before. If you were to go to the doctor with an issue, they tell you what to do, and then you just go, I won't do that. I'll keep doing what I was doing. Like you wouldn't do that. So why do it when it comes to a coach? And if you hire a coach, you need to make sure that you trust that person, and that you are going to listen to what they say. Like I've said before, like with clients, I have some clients who I could tell them anything and they do it, and that's great. Like sometimes, like obviously, you need to have common sense, but you could tell your client to, right, we're going to go 50,000 steps over this next week. And they'd be like, fucking hell, mate, are you sure? That's going to be difficult, but I'll do it because you've told me to do it. And obviously we wouldn't tell them that, but that's the kind of relationship that I think you need to have. It doesn't mean that you just, you know, it's a sort of dictatorship where I'm like, do this, do that. You know, we still communicate and we make decisions together based on the data and what's going to work well for the client, but they have to trust your thought processes and your mindset and your sort of your path for them. Otherwise they're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, I said this before on the podcast, there's an autocratic kind of position as a coach where you say, right, this is what you're doing. And there's also a democratic position. Like I've had clients, you've had clients towards the latter end of last year, you know, where it was like they questioned a few things and you're like, well, what do you want from this? Like it's almost like a least disrespectful way. What do you want? Because it's not going to be ideal if we just listen to what you say. But then at the same time, having that level of input, you'll have clients, I have clients, how like their check-ins aren't, hey mate, this has gone well, what do you think? It's more so like a back and forth. And I say, we've got these options at the table. Which would you prefer? We're going to trial most likely all of them, but we can go with the one that you prefer and go from there. So yeah, all good. I'm going to say adherence. I mean, like, I think we've almost kind of covered that, but yeah, just sticking to what's set. Like usually the vast majority of clients, so I say all the clients, they're the ones that even if they have a 7 out of 10 week, that's when their adherence is still on the money. So for example, I have some clients where they might have a piss poor week, but they won't check in or they won't get their body weight on the sheet. So they won't get the basics nailed. And I'll say, well, why haven't you nailed this? Like if you've gone out drinking, why can't you weigh yourself in the morning? Why can't you still tick your steps off that day? You know, why can't you just do the absolute bare minimum? So having that level of adherence towards the practices set. And in reality, not every client is going to be like, out of all the clients I have, likewise for you, there's not a single client that has had a 10 out of 10 week every single week. Mate, we don't have 10 out of 10 weeks every week. Like training, like we're usually consistent, but we're consistent even if it's a 7 out of 10 week or an 8 out of 10 week. And like I said, having that level of like adherence towards the long-term plan. And if one thing goes wrong, not letting that affect everything else. Your one, mate.
That's only 4, mate. So final one. We basically ticked off the basics. So like,
should we say engagement then? So for example, like we say like I've got a few
communication.
Yeah, but like regular engagement. Like we have clients who like don't message us until their check-in day, and I don't like that. Like if that's your approach, go for it. But I would rather a few videos a week, chat once or twice, spot on, all good.
Yeah. I was going to say consistency, and I know it's basic, like, and we don't really need to cover it because it is so basic. But if you're like exactly what you just said, if you're amazing for a week and have a 10 out of 10 week where everything is perfect, but then the next week, you know, it isn't as great, and then likewise you're not checking in or you're not being honest about that week or whatever it may be, you know, it's not gonna be very helpful. But yeah, I don't think it's that difficult. Like obviously all of that together sounds like a lot, but if you think about it, like literally it's kind of just being a decent human. Like if you're a decent human, you'll be a decent client. Like, so for example, like if you hired someone in any job, you want them to do the best job. Obviously when it comes to coaching, you have to do that. You know, it's like, I think I've used the analogy before, like, would you go for your haircut and just do this all the way through and move your head around? Like you wouldn't, because you're making that job so hard for the barber. So why would you do it like when it comes to coaching? Like you've hired someone for a job.
That's a really, mate, your analogy's class. Like,
but it's true, isn't it? Like you wouldn't.
No, but like I'm stunned how you even thought like on the fly. Like, I'm just gonna move back.
I've used it before, but you wouldn't, would you? You wouldn't be like, hey mate, I really want like a really sick skin fade, and then they put the thing on, and you just as soon as they put the fucking clippers out, you're like you just wouldn't do it.
And then you say, sorry, mate, it's because I'm on 80 micrograms of Clen. And they're like, oh, fair enough. You're a BB. Yeah, they get like BB. Yeah, he's 9.5 weeks out. He's just took too much Clen. And I'm like,
if we think of it in absolute basic terms, if you're a client who wants the best results for yourself, you'll be a very good client.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's it. If you're a client who maybe sort of thinks, I kind of want a decent results, but I'm not actually that bothered, then, you know, you're probably going to be, you know, don't get me wrong, you know, you can still be coachable 100%, but you've got to accept what your goals are. You've got to accept that you're maybe not going to be making amazing progress like the other people that you might see that we post about. Like we'll obviously post about clients. We post about most of our clients, but we might post clients who are doing well more so than the clients that aren't doing well. But that's standard. Why, you know, we're rewarding the people that are doing well, rewarding the people that are getting better results, And obviously it looks better for us as well from a business standpoint. You know, the people who are adhering and doing as we say are getting good results. So we're going to post about it. The people who aren't adhering and not doing as we say, not getting as good results. We're not going to then reward those people for it. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of the time people will see what we're posting and like, oh, it looks great. I want to join and get those results, but then they're not willing to put the work in that those people are putting in.
Yeah, spot on. Your question, mate.
Mate, we've gone over our time and we've got loads of questions. Should we save some for next time? We won't do them all.
Yeah, no, we won't.
This is from Ben Mitchum, client. He's over in Dubai now, living it up with Larry Wheels. Trains with Larry Wheels now. It's his training partner. Yeah. He says, how is there bodybuilders? I think he means how are there bodybuilders who don't train with proper accuracy / intensity, but still look incredible?
Genetic response to firstly training, genetic response to PEDs. Again, the genetic factor is massive. Like at the same time, it's challenging because like there's certain training methods that are absurd. And we were saying this the other day on the way to the gym, where like they might train like weapons, but their intensity is still okay because they're taking 10 assisted reps, or like their execution might be diabolical. But when you have elite genetics, and the vast majority of all top bodybuilders will have very, very good genetic components mixed in with a fantastic response to PEDs and pharmaceuticals. So you mix all that, their training can be pretty poor. But at the same time, you see them training when they don't need to be growing a ridiculous amount of muscle. So for example, Phil Heath, you watch him train when he was prepping for Olympias. I can guarantee you, Phil Heath, on the build up to when he was, let's say, getting his growing the most amount of size. I mean, he was going from like the amateur ranks to the IFBB ranks to like the Olympia kind of stage. I can guarantee he was beating his numbers and he was progressing his lifts and he was relentless with his progressions. Kai Green reps 4 to 5 plates on a low incline press, like barbell press. But then you see him train and he's doing pump work with 60 kilos or 100 kilos with 5-second eccentrics and sets of 25. So it's very easy to look at them training like when they're at the top level and go, how are they looking like that? But in reality, they've probably just put in the work and they're just being a little bit more specialized, and they can have an arm day and they can have just a delt day where they do side raises because their tissue is already maintained. They're then on probably grams worth of gear per week. So there's already that. And then you mix in elite genetics with consistency over a 5, 10, 15, 20-year model. That being said, there are going to be outliers who train like weapons, who eat like weapons, and they look fantastic. And that's when you just hold your hands up. Like we all know people you grew up with and they touched a weight and they blew up and you were like, what the fuck? This is
you, mate.
Yeah, definitely me. No, mate, there were people stronger than me at like 16, 17. And I was like, what? Like you train like once or twice a week. Nick, my mate growing up, he used to train once every 3 months. He'd come in and set a new bench PR. Like I'd add 5 kilos over a month and he'd add 10 kilos within 3 months. And I'd still be stronger than him, but I'd be like, hey, how the hell are you doing this? You haven't even trained. And like, there's some times where like genetic response, you mix all that in and it occurs. Like I said, there are some outliers where people do train like pretty poor. But at the same time, like it's not just a sense of, yes, you could argue taking a muscle from full range of motion to a set of resistance from fully lengthened to a fully shortened position is going to be providing stimulus. But it's not the be all and end all for some people. Like for us, yeah, it is. But there's always degrees where you say, right, well, it's just how some people are. And to be fair, him being in Dubai, I don't know what gyms he's training at, but it'll probably be exacerbated where there are people who are training horrendously and they look ridiculous. You know,
yeah, when he trained in that Benu's gym, he was like,
"Oh, did he train there? That's mint." Yeah,
yeah, but he's not. He said it was shit. He said like, it's not great. It looks a lot better on social media. There's just a lot of sort of people in there that you'd expect to be in there, just sort of. Maybe not the gym that you'd want to train out of. He's not going to train there. Just sort of seems like it's a lot of.
He's too advanced for it. That's what he said. I'm
just like a lot of people, a lot of influencers, and a lot of sort of show offs, and it's not a nice atmosphere. It's almost like everyone's up their own arse, which is expected, really. But yeah, I think pretty much, mate, the main thing is genetics. And Ben's not stupid. Like, he's aware to that and his level of genetics. He knows where he's at. Like, he knows he's not got elite level genetics. He's also not got awful genetics. Like, you know, he's progressed massively since we started together. And like a lot of that was in the lockdown as well. So, you know, I think it's one of them where you can easily be like, don't compare yourself to others, but it's a lot easier said than done. Like, you'll look at people and you think, fucking hell, their training is horrendous. How do they look that good? but you can't look past genetics. Like exactly what you were saying, think about the kids at school that were always, the fastest, always the strongest, and they just ate shit and didn't do anything. And that's just genetics. Like there's always those kind of kids. And that's just life. It's as simple as that. But I would argue that those people would look even better and be even stronger if they were to be absolutely meticulous with everything and really nail their accuracy and their intensity. But because they can get away without doing, they're working at, let's say, maybe 70%. So 70% of their potential is better than 99% of people's potential. But for the majority of us who haven't got those absolute god tier genetics where we can just do anything really and look mint, then we've got to try and maximize what we can do. And I would also argue, like we said, those people who do look pretty good, who look like they train like shit, they do still train pretty hard a lot of the time. Like their intensity isn't great because they're not accurate. So they're not accurately taking a muscle to true failure, but they are doing forced reps and then doing supersets and drop sets, and they're probably doing crazy amounts of volume, and they're usually not weak. Like there's guys in the gym who we would think like they're training shit, but they're still repping out 100 kilos plus on the bench for 10, 20 reps, like easily. So they are usually strong, like, and they've probably been doing it for a good amount of time as well. Like it's not as if they've done it for 6 months and they're all of a sudden massive. Like they've probably trained since they're 15 and they're maybe 25 now. I'm looking at it on a lower level. I know you were sort of talking about absolute top level, but if you think like, I'm assuming that he's probably just talking about people in the gym who look good, or maybe bodybuilders who are like lower level bodybuilders who look mint, but then you look at how they train on Instagram and you're like, what the fuck? But like you say, a lot of that is genetics. More often it's due to obviously taking gear, and then time as well. A lot of the time they've been probably doing it for a lot longer than most of us who are looking at them thinking like, how do they look like that?
So if anyone asks, just say he's on gear, I'm natty. That's why. Just blame.
That's what it is. Anyone who's bigger than you, they must be on gear.
Yeah, exactly. Or better genetics. And if they've got both, you're fucked. That's all we can say. Right. So CIW fitness. Mate, such a deep root question. This something that I've really had to contemplate. But I actually ran it by my coach, and he gave me a voice note saying, "I don't know why I'm even having to ask. I should know. Is it a good idea to take creatine on a bodybuilding competition prep? Holding that water, holding that water. Now, I just can't. You know what? The visual look. I'm looking too soft. Creatine's got to go.
I don't know.
The worst thing is, some people will listen to that and go, "Oh my god, he's right."
But I don't know how people don't know about this now.
Yeah, but creatine holds water, so people think but it holds it intramuscular, inside the muscle cell. So it's like, why would you not want creatine to have a fuller appearance? And then likewise, the performance benefits. Like, no, creatine shouldn't ever be taken out.
I think it's
like,
I feel like we should be past that stage now.
Yeah. This is something that would come up on forums when I was 16
years ago. Maybe don't take creatine if you're trying to diet or whatever. Like now, I feel like it's just known, or it should be known. It's a really good supplement. It's well trusted. It's well researched over time. It's very cheap. Like just use it. Like even if you're not a responder of it, then still, like I wouldn't say that I'm a responder from it. I've never taken creatine and gone, oh, I can tell I'm taking creatine. I don't think you have. I don't think most people have. No. I think you preempt it. Like if you're not that aware of it, you'll go, oh mate, I'm taking creatine and now I feel loads fuller. You probably don't. You probably just think that it's like a placebo effect. But for the people that do probably maybe get some form of benefit that I can actually feel, then great. But even if you don't feel it, like the research is there. It's like saying, should I take caffeine before training? You don't have to, but there's a lot of research on it that can really benefit your training. So why wouldn't you? And it's cheap. In terms of supplements, that's one of the things you need to look at a lot of the time is how cheap is it? Generally what are the side effects? Like when it comes to creatine and caffeine and things like that, like the sort of risk versus reward ratio is very favorable. So you'd be almost stupid not to use them, whether you're dieting or gaining or what.
Yeah, makes sense. Right, your question, mate.
This is from Big Brad Steelyard. He's dying.
He only asked you questions. I'm surprised he's not dead.
Yeah, I know, 5 weeks into the diet and he's absolutely dying apparently.
I think he'll be 6 weeks now. Like we're going to see him tomorrow and he's going to literally be a skeleton. Like, lads, I'm struggling. I'm like, mate.
Be a carcass. It'll just be a carcass in the middle of the gym. Oh, there's
he's going to get on the Smith machine, just die. Oh shit, there you go. Another one.
It was coming. He was asking for it. He dieted for 5 weeks. What does he expect? So basically, but how important is structure / muscle insertions in a bodybuilding show, or will size and condition win?
Oh, so you can go off the generic, like hard work beats talent, but unfortunately, like certain times it doesn't, which is a bit of a shame. It's very interesting, like insertions in relation to how it looks. So for example, like your arms, like your biceps, for example, I think you could agree that like your biceps are inserted quite well. I'm not saying you don't have muscle there, you definitely have good arms,
Got
but
zero
your
muscle there.
zero muscle.
No
Like your biceps are inserted very well. They hang off like the bone, should we say? Like they're always quite full, and therefore like your arms probably appear bigger than they actually are in a certain standpoint. You know, like I reckon if we were to measure arms, I've got bigger arms than you. My triceps are bigger, but I reckon if we were to both do like a front double bicep, your like arms would look bigger. You know, and there will be that kind of predisposition where you are going to have certain times where, let's say, for example, it will impact where you place. Again, I think at the low to medium levels, it's not that important. But at the same time, structure is massive. Like, especially if your, for example, physique is vastly based off structure. And then if you've got side delts and like lats, that's literally what it is, and a bit of arms. So if your structure is appalling, like you are going to be facing an uphill battle. For example, everyone loves JP. He's the first one to admit his structure's like bang average, if not pretty poor. Like, he's very small, he's not that wide, but he's got a ridiculous amount of muscle. You then compare him to other IFBB pros who have far better structure but less muscle. So you'd be thinking, well, why isn't JP a pro? Like, there's so many kind of caveats to this, but at the same time, I wouldn't be focusing too much. Like, if your structure's good, sound. If your structure isn't good, cool, work with what you've got. Nobody gets into bodybuilding because they get told, oh, your structure's fantastic, mate, you need to bodybuild. They get into bodybuilding because you love it. You get on with it. You're like, right, I like this, you know?
Yeah, so, no one would ever, like you say, you would never know just from never touching a weight. You'd never be like, you've got good bodybuilding structure, because you wouldn't know that. Like, exactly what you just said, like, you can only do what you've actually got. Like, there's no point comparing someone else and going, oh, but their structure is better than mine, so they might beat me. Like, yeah, they might. Like, but there's no point even dwelling on that. Just do what you can do. If you know that you've done absolutely everything in your power to be the best you can be when you compete and you come last, it doesn't really matter, because you've done everything you can do. Like, it's not ideal, you don't want to come last, but at least you could step off stage and be like, fucking hell, like, maybe bodybuilding is not for me, or maybe, you know, that standard, I just need more time, but I did absolutely everything I could to be the best I could be. Doesn't matter if someone's got better structure or whatever it may be, you know that you did whatever you can do. But yeah, I think, you know, like exactly what you said in terms of, at the end of the day, like, genetics plus hard work, like, is going to win. So, like, you know, you might work as hard as possible. You might be the hardest worker on the stage, but if the guy who's got better structure, better genetics than you works hard as well, maybe not as hard, but works really hard, they're probably going to win, which is a shame, but that's the world we live in. But then obviously I'd almost think when he's put about structure and then he's put about size and condition, like, they do kind of go hand in hand a lot of the time. I would argue that, let's say, someone who had good structure but very little muscle compared to someone who had, let's say, a worse structure but a lot more muscle, depending on the actual federation or the actual category that you're in. But I would argue that they probably are going to win, especially if condition's better. Like, structure won't carry you through completely. But if it's a toss-up between, like, oh, you know, it's close, that guy's got better structure, and generally they're probably going to win.
Yeah, agreed. Right, spot on. Can the stretch be as advantageous as the contraction? So basically, can lengthen work be as beneficial as contraction work? And in reality, I will actually interject and say, well, you kind of need both. Like, you can't really get a contraction. You can't just be like, for example, doing a bicep curl and being like, oh, I'm just doing the shorten range here. I'm not actually even going to lengthen. I'm just doing 21s. That's what the 21s were. Do you remember that? You do the shorten, and you do
you could just say do an isometric contraction and not do any lengthen work. Like, I think if you're thinking of it as one or the other, like, you already got the wrong kind of sort of outlook on it. Like, it's not that, or the lengthen position is better or worse than the shorten position, or vice versa. Like, obviously we might spend more time in a shorten position on a leg extension, or on a contraction on the single arm lateral lat pull down. Like, that doesn't mean that, we're only doing that because the contracted position is better. Like, that's not why. We're doing it in terms of trying to maximize that part of the movement at that time in the session. I would generally focus more so on taking it through a full range of motion. If you want to spend time in different portions of the rep, then do so, but understand why you're doing it, and understand sort of the goal is to basically try and generally fatigue that muscle through its full contractile range throughout the entire session. So if you think of it like that, then I wouldn't say that one or the other is better. They're both as important as each other. Likewise, the eccentric is as important as the concentric. I don't think you need to think of it as sort of one or the other. And I think they may be asking that because they've seen sort of pauses on contraction. But also that, you can spend time in the lengthened range. You can do loaded stretches like we often have done before. And that can be beneficial as well. Like, it's not one or the other. It's sort of, they're all as important and can be as beneficial as each other.
Yeah, spot on. I agree. Take as many reps from a fully lengthened to a fully shortened position and milk the absolute crap out of the eccentric until you literally cannot perform with the concentric. Simple. Right. Shoot. Go for it, mate.
This is a quick one. What software do you use to monitor sleep, HRV, resting heart rate, readiness? So I use my Oura Ring. You use your Apple Watch.
Yeah, but I take the Apple Watch while I go to sleep because it annoys me. So I don't even get that. But I have used Sleep Cycle in the past, and I recommend that to the vast majority of individuals. Application on your phone, free app, makes it come across that you have to pay for it. No, it's free. You can pay for like a deluxe edition that tells you an in-depth on where you're snoring from or whatever. I don't know. It's strange. So yeah, that's that. I've been asked by Pearson, big Pearson. He's got the new Bodybuilding Podcast where he's dropping it parts. I will say, Pearson, like, to drop it all in one episode, mate. I'd listen. Like, I don't want to be listening to different parts. Have you seen that? Yeah. Like, it's how to get fucking massive, whatever. Part 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, so I'll just wait for them all to be out and then I'll listen. I don't want to listen to part 1.
Are they only on Instagram as well? Are they not on anything else?
Like Pearson, you could have sorted that out.
Pearson, step your game up, mate. Maybe, to be fair, maybe he's just trying to make it a bit different, and I don't blame him because usually podcasts are a full episode on Spotify, on YouTube. So maybe he's just being a bit different. You be you, Pearson.
Yeah. He put, firstly, rate the duck face. So he rates the pout in the photo. Yeah,
I don't. It's horrendous.
Yeah, it's awful.
Makes me feel physically sick.
Does it? Yeah. Cheers. Hilarious. Just showing the kids that. Thanks. We then have, hope you both well. Who's better training partner, Sanaya or Finn? And he spelt your name wrong. He's put one N, so that's that.
One what?
He's spelt Finn's name wrong. It's just Fin, so like Finn at the end of a French film. So Finn,
obviously.
Yeah. So basically, to break it down, question to me. It's a very challenging question. I'm going to have to say I'm going to go for Finn because he can brace. If Sanaya can brace, maybe, but Finn can brace. So Finn has to have the win here. And to be fair, I haven't really given Sanaya as many. Like, if you think about it, mate, we trained for so many years. Sanaya I've only trained with like 3 times, and she did get better. I thought like after I told her off about her bracing was better. So yeah, that was all right. But you build up a chemistry. You know when someone's going to fail. You know when someone's switched on. With Sanaya, I don't know how she trains. And no doubt, I most likely will eventually learn. But right now, I can't be looking past Finn. And even if it was, I'd still probably say so. Yeah. Yeah, I can't. So yeah, it'd be like if you were asked, like, I don't know. And to be fair, mate, you haven't really trained with anyone like.
You're going to turn into one of those couples that does everything together, train together, everything, steps together,
meal prep together, everything. Yeah, that's what it's going to be. Yeah. Right. So carry on. She said that's going to be the last thing I do. Like one of those, and then laughed afterwards. You know, you laugh at your own joke, but it's not funny.
It is funny.
Like, imagine I just went like to you and I just went, it's the last thing I do. Ha ha! You'd be like, right, mate, sound. Fuck off. You laughed at that. So, yeah, that was that. Right, your question's done.
Nah, mate, I've got a few more. Do you want to wrap it up? Save them.
No, mate, I'll have a read through. I've been asked by Theo Constantine. You ever heard of a
Going on to yours then?
Yep, going on to mine. Because I've got more than you. If you were fully fit...
How do you know that?
Mate, I've already gone through. I've got more than you. Chill out, all right? Know your place, mate.
How many have you got left?
Like 5, 6, maybe. Yeah,
right.
So right. You go. Your question.
Nah, go on. You've already started.
Okay. If you were fully fit, no injuries or niggles, what do you think the best hinge movement is?
Best hinge.
Yeah. I really, really like the stiff leg currently, but that's biased because I'm getting on well with it.
Yeah, but I think it's a good shout.
Yeah. It depends what you want.
I'd probably say a stiff leg or an RDL from a hypertrophy standpoint. From an enjoyment standpoint, and from sort of, if you look at it like obviously like a powerlifting standpoint, then yeah, conventional. But I would say a toss up between the RDL and the stiff leg. I wouldn't really favour either or, to be honest. I think I like the stiff leg a little bit more because of the fact that you have an end point and that you can't really cheat on it, especially if you're good at it and keeping your knees fixed. The only way you can cheat is you can turn it into a conventional. With an RDL, it's harder to standardise. A lot of the time, people's range is pretty shit.
Get stuck on 100 kilos on the RDL.
Get stuck on 100 for 7 for the past 6 months. Not ideal. No. But I think a lot of people will do an RDL and progress it solely through reducing the range rather than actually progressing it. And I think it's harder to standardise that progression. Whereas with a stiff leg, if you're tapping the floor and you're keeping your knee flexion at the same degree, then you can't really not progress it with good form, and you can't take away that standardisation. So I quite like the stiff leg for that. But then I'd also say the stiff leg is probably more challenging. People might.
The skill level of an SL, massive. Like you can cock up a rep. Like when I had them in during the first lockdown, I got 190 for like 7 or 8, and then do you remember the following week? I was like, right, 200's on. I got 0. Like that was because my level of skill at that point from pulling from the floor diabolical, and I bit off a bit more than I can chew. Following week, I got 200 for 5, and it was where literally like I'm lucky that right now like I'm not. Like I'm decent at pulling in a stiff leg kind of fashion. Like you wouldn't look at my execution and say, it definitely needs work because the first rep is now better. The first rep, the first month, mate, wasn't the first rep was awful every time. Yeah. The second and thirds were fine. The first rep was diabolical. Where now the first rep's okay, but it does require a lot of skill. Yeah, but just to, like I said, what you mentioned, the stimulus to fatigue ratio, I would be saying a stiff leg or an RDL. Personally, I've been getting on very well with stiff leg. So I'm really excited, to be fair, like to get a bit fatter and be in an energy surplus and see what I could run it up to. Because I'd quite like to have like a 240 plus on that. I think that would be achievable for a top set. And I quite like to have 2 working sets. Like when I say like recovery capabilities are allowed, I'd like to have like a high rep back off set on like 200 kilos or 180 or something, like set 15 or something mental. But I quite like to do that. So yeah, I'd say a stiff leg or an RDL, but they're more precise and finite movements that need a bit higher of a skill kind of capability to get after them. Right, so we'll pick back up. We're not 100% sure where we left off.
It was at the end of the question, mate. I was asking you one. That's why we don't have to. When I pause it like that, they won't even notice. You've ruined it now.
Yeah, but I wanted to highlight your 12-year-old bladder and say that Finn couldn't last to the end of a.
It's not that. It's just that I'm so well hydrated.
Mate, I'm literally 8 liters deep today. This is my 8th liter.
You're a liar.
I'm not joking.
You're a liar.
I'm not.
You're just a liar.
Lie confirmed. Sorry, mate. I'm being a poor client. I'm not being honest.
So, Tommy Barker, one of my clients, is a good lad. Is Tommy? It's the guy who, I don't know if you saw my story. He sent me a voice note today he sent me like a long voice note, but halfway through he's like, anyway, mate, in other news, I stepped on something on my walk, and it probably made me laugh because he said it was like long and hard and squidgy, and I was like, and in my head I was like, he stepped on a dildo on his walk, and that literally I was like. That's what I was thinking. They told me what it was. It turned out it was a snake. But yeah, it was like I stepped on it was like bigger than a twig, but it was hard but squidgy. It wasn't like dog poo, but it wasn't like a twig. It was hard and long and squidgy, and I was just like, he's definitely stepped on a dildo, but it wasn't. It was a snake, but it was all right.
That's scary. Yeah, that's weird.
Anyway, that's irrelevant. His question was, when you first started training, what did you learn first out of accuracy, execution, and intensity?
The latter, intensity. I should have learned execution. My execution across the board was never a bad idea. It wasn't bad. I remember I watched so many YouTube tutorials, and like I'd video myself. I'd always try and focus, but my intensity was always quite decent. Like it's definitely got better, but I've always been able to I was always the weird kid when we go in and we pull 1 rep max deadlifts that I'd have to stand and I'd get myself so amped up to the point where everybody would just go in and before they pulled it, they were like, right, let's just having a chat. They're joking. Oh, let's see. And like, I'd literally be headphones in, switched on. I'd be pacing up and down the gym, and I'd be like, right, let's go. Like, I could always find it within myself to get myself switched on. So I'd say intensity was always there. It wasn't something I really learned. But because my lack of accuracy was present, as it is with anybody in the first year or so, I wasn't able to really take my movements to the level of intensity like needed. But if I was to look at it, you'd want to originally establish proper accuracy and then intensity, because you can't really be intense with poor accuracy, because you just get to a point, like we said, or a bent row or in any pull movement or really anything, you just keep adding more inertia, or you're moving around and you creating that like intra-set momentum. The second that dies, then the set's over. You might have 4 reps in reserve from the musculature that you're trying to work. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, like if I think right back to like when I was like 14 and first ever stepped in a gym, then your intensity is through the roof, because you're taking force reps everywhere. You don't know what you're doing. So your mate's just going, yeah, all you. And you're like fucking dead for days after you've trained. So intensity is definitely first. But then I would say when I properly started training at like 18, 19, I guarantee like now, if I was to look back at my training, I'd be pretty happy with the execution. I'd be like, form's actually pretty good, but my intensity won't have been great. I almost like was trying to be like too pretty at that point, when I was learning about movement patterns and what musculature is responsible for what joints move and all of that kind of thing, learning the anatomy and everything. I was almost overly focused on it when I was training, which I don't think was a bad thing, because it meant that I sort of understood my body a lot more and I could connect with every muscle pretty much, like not when I first started, like ages ago, but when I first came to uni and I started really focused on training. But then if I was to watch my training back then, I'd be like, I've got loads of reps on that. So, but I think that's not a bad way of doing it. Generally, like you say, if you were to sort of do it perfectly, it would be that you nail the execution across the board, nail your accuracy, accuracy is going to come over time as well, just with more experience. And with gaining more muscle, you can actually feel a muscle more. It's very hard to actually feel like you're training with accuracy when you're so small and you've got no muscle. Like, you're not going to feel a pull up in your back until you've actually got a decent back. Like, you'll always feel it in your forearms first, because they're going to take over. And obviously if you're not using wraps and things like that. But yeah, I would generally say, the perfect situation would be to really nail your execution and then drive your intensity and your strength from there.
All good. Yeah, happy with that. I got 2 questions to conclude. They're quick ones. Have you got any to finish, or are you good?
We've still got a few, mate.
Go for it. You go for yours.
This is from Radu Popescu. You know Radu Popescu, yeah?
Who doesn't?
Is it good to have a lot of cramps in the quads after a hard session, and also very high soreness that last 6 days?
No. no, Radu.
Usually I'll look at the questions a bit before, before I'm about to read them, but I've literally just read that out, and no.
Yeah, no, Radu, you gotta, no, sorry, bro. No help here, mate, you're screwed. So I'm guessing you'll be training legs twice per week. So if you're going in and you're sore, that's probably going to be maybe not like massively affecting. I think a lot of people overestimate. Like, I, for example, haven't trained, let's say, push since Saturday. My pec tie-ins and my anterior delt are still quite tender, but that's normal. So I'd like you to really specialize how sore your quads are, because I'm always a tad sore. Now, if you're written off and you can't even sit down to go to the toilet 2 or 3 days afterwards, you're probably doing too much, that's for sure. So I would probably look to scale your volume down. Maybe potentially, as mentioned earlier, like accuracy and your intensity might be really good, but your accuracy might be really poor. But I would definitely be favoring, if you're training legs twice per week, ideally you wouldn't be wanting to wake up and think, oh, I'm ruined. So if you're training legs Thursday, let's say Wednesday, Saturday, you wouldn't want it to come around on that Saturday, because that's sooner than the Saturday to Wednesday. The Wednesday to Saturday is sooner. You wouldn't want to go within the classic 3 sleeps time, bro, and be written off and thinking, oh God, my quads are still sore. So yeah, you definitely want to probably pull your volume down, or potentially just look at the external variables. The fact that he says he's getting cramped and as such, there's probably going to be a fair amount. Like, where is he in phase? Is his food really low? Is he doing loads of assisted reps? What's his overall session like? Is he doing, let's say, GVT? Is he doing like 50 sets per session? Is he properly hydrated? Is he utilizing salt, potassium, taurine, things that are going to be main mechanisms of like cellular hydration and just in general like recovery capabilities. Is he making sure to get sleep, like quality and sleep time in general, little things like that. So yeah, I wouldn't say 6 days is going to be ideal, but if it's 6 days worth of very mild soreness, I mean, if you've gone balls to the wall on a lower session, I mean, we've all been there, but it's not ideal from like a long-term model.
Yeah, on top of that, I'd say like the more frequent that you train, generally the faster you'll recover as well. Like if I was to train legs once every 2 weeks, they're going to absolutely be like, the DOMs are going to write me off for probably a week. Like I've had it before where I've gone on holiday for, I think I went away for like 4 days. So I think I might have missed 1 or 2 leg sessions. So it might have been like 10 days between my 2 leg days. And the second leg day, like I trained as normal, beat numbers and things, which I shouldn't have really done. Like learning now that I wouldn't do that. I'd go in and I'd probably try and match, and I'd go in at a D volume after a certain amount of time off. But I did that, and literally I couldn't train legs for the next like 10 days again. And then I trained them again, and it was like I couldn't train them for 7 days. And then I trained them again, and then it was like 4 days. So like the more frequent that you train them, the faster you'll recover. There are some people who can do 2 sets on a leg extension, 1 amazing set on a hack, and their quads are done for 10 days. If you're that type of person, likelihood is you've got huge quads, you're insanely strong, and you're a high-level bodybuilder, and then you can decide how long you need between leg days. But I'd say for most people, you could probably train them every 4 days, 3 to 4 days. And if it is that you're absolutely trash, then you're probably doing a little bit too much, or you're not managing all your recovery variables as well as you could.
Yeah, spot on. Right, Finn Morton. What's the max amount of fat I can lose in 6 weeks in order to not lose any muscle? Cheers.
I swear, right, there's a lot of people now called Finn.
Yeah, I was going to be
really like it. Because
I was going to be Finn. That's my mum. My mum had a short list. Finn, Oscar, Reece.
So Finn became like really popular, like when I was probably like 5, 6. As I was growing up a bit more, like to be fair, it's still quite popular now, but it's more so Finley. If his name's Finley, it's all right.
Finn, but only it's one N, so.
Oh, it'll be Finley. Fair enough, mate. But call yourself Finley.
Yeah. What's the max amount of fat I can lose in 6 weeks in order not to lose any muscle?
40 kilos.
Yeah, any more, you lose 40.1 kilos, you literally have just lost all your tissue. Yeah, impossible to answer, unfortunately, pal. It depends on where you are. 6 weeks, if you can progress your training and maintain your training, keep protein at a high amount, you can be very aggressive. I really dislike the connotations between, like, because people train like weapons and they diet on absolutely no food in the past, everyone has lost muscle on a deficit. And at the same time, you will also lose a lot of fullness, which people think is muscle. What you mentioned when we were talking about prep, you lose a little bit of size, and that will be from fullness. And you're like, oh my God, I've lost so much muscle. And in reality, you just don't have enough muscle. That's pretty much how it is. So you can lose pretty much as much fat as you want, but there is going to be subsequent effects if it's too aggressive. But at the same time, for 6 weeks, get in, get out, mini cut, tidy up, you should be all good. So yeah, it's impossible for us to say this is the maximum level. You can't lose more than 12% of total body weight in a 6-week block of dieting. It's impossible for us to say. But if you can keep the variables mentioned in point, it's not going to be the end of the world.
So 40 kilos, yeah?
40 kilos anymore.
I thought
all muscle gone. Literally that 0.1 of a kilo actually transfers, and the fat oxidation and like glycolysis just, literally converts. It converts it. Instead of turning, I'm turning this fat into muscle, it turns muscle into fat, and then it literally just disappears off your body, and you're like, oh shit, I'm now 40 kilos lighter and I've got no muscle.
Nightmare. Like, started off at 45 kilos as well.
Yeah. I'm now 5 kilos.
It's Brad Steelyard.
Yeah, he's dying. Yeah, you die as well at the end, but it occurs, you die. So yeah, that's what happens. Brad, be careful. Right, you got any more? Are you done?
Yeah, this is my last one. This is from Tatenda. Save the best till last.
Best till last, baby. There we go.
Sounds like a dumb question, but how can you make sure you're training hard enough with accuracy? I think most people think they train in hard, including myself, but they aren't doing as much as they actually can.
See people that can train really well and you notice you have levels to go.
Tatenda's got some good people in warehouse too.
Yeah, he's got some really good people. More specifically on Monday. That's it. Monday used to be Thursday and Wednesday. Now it's only Monday. Yeah. So Monday to Tatenda, just pay attention. Maybe just come to the gym not to train. That's all I'd say. No, I would say you learn a lot from looking at others. In the first couple of years of training, I literally would do cardio after I train. I just watch people train. Like, it would be like, oh, see how this person trains. Or I'd watch YouTube videos. Or I'd listen to podcasts. I'm not saying that's going to help. Like, the actual practical setting and pushing yourself is the do or die. I find it quite absurd when people say to me like, oh, mentally I just wasn't in it, or let's say I struggled today with this, I struggled with that. Like, it is one of those where it gets to a point where it's a non-negotiable. Like, we've said it many a times on the podcast, and again, we don't blow smoke to blow smoke because there's no need, but there's not been a single time really in the last like 2 years where we've done a set, and other than an injury, we've stopped and it's not been true like do or die failure. We never just stopped and gone, mate, you had a rep in reserve there, look like you had another rep there. I remember there was one set on the bent row and I did it, and I left one rep in reserve because I like my back was awful. And I remember you saying it to me, and it like haunted me because I was like, oh my. And I think we might have said stuff like during the lockdowns where it was pressing and you were like deeper into prep and it felt a bit off. So there was a few times where things were a bit inconsistent, but in reality, just pushing yourself and having that like fight or flight response. So when you get it, you say, right, I'm gonna fight, and you go. And it is true. Like, a lot of people think they train a lot harder. How many people will get clients or
pretty much every client that we've ever had.
Every single person thinks they train really, really well, and like ourselves included. But the problem is like you then have to back it up. And you could have next to me, and it was prime Dorian Yates. I mean, we train with someone who used to train with him at Evo. But you could have Dorian Yates, you could have JP, and I wouldn't ever feel like I'm going into a set and I'd be like, oh my God, I hope he doesn't say I've got more reps there. Like, there's not a doubt in my mind. I'd be sound. Like, I'm turning up. That's what it is, you know, like, that's my set, it's my time. That's what it is. So, yeah, but I've worked on that. Like, our training 2 years ago, 3 years ago was nowhere near as good as it is currently. And like, I've said this again, if you ask me right now, is my training as good as it can be currently? I'd say yes, but will it be better in a year? Yeah. So
yeah, I think as well, like, obviously we were saying, like, obviously look at people who train harder and who are bigger and stronger than you. Like, that doesn't have to be in person. Like, look at how many people there are out there that post their training, whether it be just on their story or on YouTube or whatever it may be. Like, there's so many people that obviously you've got to sort of almost like make sure you're following the right people. But
that's fantastic.
You know the people to follow, and you can tell if they train well or not. Like, it's not difficult to sort of tell. But yeah, I think like one thing that I always say to my clients, once we've absolutely nailed execution, I say keep it like that, and imagine that there's just a lunatic in the gym. Someone's coming to the gym and they've just got a gun to your head saying, "Can you do another rep? Do another rep? Do another rep? Do another rep?" Would you be able to do it? We like for us. Would it make a difference to our training? No. All it'd do is it'd scare you when you're training, which wouldn't be ideal. But you know what I mean? In terms of like how far we take a set, if there was someone saying, "I will shoot you if you don't do another rep," like we wouldn't be able to get loads more reps.
To a family member. Like, it sounds weird, but like literally, if you were like, right, your mum's gonna die if you don't take the set all the way there.
I used to do that. I don't do that as much now, but when like I used to have to do that, especially on the Matrix hack. For some reason, mate, the Matrix hack made me like weird. I used to have to think about like people dying and torturing Shannon and shit like that. And it's weird, but it helped. Like, it made me think, fucking hell. And even now, like now and again, on a last rep or so, in my head, like it'll just switch to that mindset, and I'll think like everything on this rep or you'll die.
Yeah.
Like, and it just goes to that place. Like, it's very rare because I almost feel like once you adapt to it, like it just becomes the norm that you take it to that level, and you don't need any more drive. Like for example, like me shouting at you, going one more rep. Like, you don't need that. You'd go for it anyway. But I think as you're learning to get to that level of intensity, it's good to have that. Like, I guarantee if Tatenda trained with us, he'd finish the session, he'd be like, "Oh my God, like I'm absolutely trashed. That's the best session I've ever had."
If I'm honest, I don't even think he'd finish the session. Like,
yeah.
And that's not any insult to Tatenda. And like, that's how I hate when people are like, "You wouldn't be able to train with us." I literally think he'd get to the hack squat, or like he'd do a hamstring curl, leg extension.
Look how battered we are just after like that. Anyway,
because he just wouldn't even be used to it. His body would be freaking out by the time he's done like 4 sets to actual failure with a hold and contraction. He's then going down to a hack squat and then a leg press. Like, I don't even think he'd get through like the first set of the hack. And like, that's no insult to Tatenda. Not many people could. And again, like if you would say to us 3 years ago, "Can we hang with us how we're training now?" No chance.
No.
We'd say we could, and we'd end up like Tatenda. Like, "Mate, do you remember the Matrix hack? There was that time you got me on a video. We were in the abductor room in Pure, and I'm literally leaning against the wall, and I like fell back because I was like, I literally had to sit there for about 20 minutes. I couldn't even think about anything. I felt like I was going to throw up. There were times I remember when I was like 17, I did a 35 rep, I think it was like 80 kilo barbell squat. I threw up twice. I had to get the bin in the gym. And it was like, I was just doing it because I was like, I'm just going to see how I can go, see how many reps I can go.
Yeah,
like
those things we've said
kind
before.
of foundations that build you up. But that wouldn't happen now, because I'd just be like, go again, breathe, brace, go, you know?
Yeah, you wouldn't recommend that, but it's almost quite good because it shows you that level that you can actually work to.
Yeah.
We've both had sessions in the past, especially as we were learning to train harder. We've had sessions with people where you'll be absolutely sort of bedbound for a few days afterwards. And like now we'd look at that and be like, yeah, that's not ideal. We wouldn't want to do that. But it also shows you that you can train a lot harder. But there's also different forms of training. Like if we were to just randomly go and do a massively high volume approach tomorrow, like we'd be trashed for days. But, you know, that it's dependent on that. That's more so not just due to the fact that I wouldn't class that as training harder. That's the fact that it's sort of a novel stimulus of doing something different. Yeah. But yeah, I think, you know, the main thing on that is watch other people train, nail your execution, and then go to the point where the muscle cannot contract against that load. If you do that, you've done everything you can on that set. Like, simple as that. This is as well, like, where obviously, like we said, obviously with clients, like it's helpful to have someone who knows that you've got more. So like, the amount of times that I'll message a client, I'm like, you've got more there, and they're like, really?
No,
I thought that was it. Like, I don't think I have. And I'm like, you have, I promise you. Like, I've watched hundreds of thousands of form videos, like, over time. I guarantee you're okay. You can go again. Like, more often than not, they'll then go into it next week and they'll beat it by 2-3 reps, and like, oh my god, yeah, you know, I have got more. Or they're the type of client who go, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
No, they don't do it.
No, that's right. I got a question from final one from a guy called Brody, who doesn't follow me. Every single time we do the questions, he asks me questions. So I think it's a burner account. It says no profile picture, but it has 100 followers. So I almost feel inclined not to answer the question. So I'm almost a bit like, mate, just tell me who you are. Like, if you follow me, fine. I'd rather you message me, because I don't mind helping people out. But to ask me on a random fake account, it's like, mate, who are you? Like, what's your actual name? Is it really Brody, or is it like, I don't know, someone else? Is it? I'm trying to think. So I won't say anything because I end up causing you drama. So firstly, why do people have lower carbs, higher fat on rest days? It doesn't always have to be higher fat, lower carbs. Pretty simple. Energy demands, movement demands are going to be less on a rest day for most people. If you think about it, you're not training, therefore the demand for the main source of fuel will be lower. That's pretty much the rationale. And then I can never say this. You can say it every time. IFYM. Yeah. A good thing or a bad thing? You can answer that.
I think it depends on the individual. I think some people can really benefit from it.
Depends.
It does though. I wouldn't say it's. I wouldn't. Again, it's like it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think people think that way too often. It has to be one. It has to be good or bad. Why can't it just be? It's decent. Like, if you want to use it, use it. I'm not a huge fan of it. Like, I think in terms of food quality, it will probably drop if you use that approach. I think in terms of consistency and routine, digestion, all those things can take a hit if you are to take that approach. But then I would also argue that, you know, in some circumstances, you know, it can be really beneficial. You know, if you're going away for a weekend, or if you're someone who finds it sort of overly pressuring to track your macros completely to the T, or to follow a meal plan. I think, you know, it's completely dependent on what feels best for you. And if you can adhere to generally, you know, doing if it fits your macros approach, and still make really good progress, still feel good day in, day out, you know, still have good digestion, good food quality, still eating enough fiber and things like that, then go for it. But on the other hand, you might be someone who works much better with a more sort of rigid structure and a strict meal plan that you follow to the T day in, day out, and you feel better for doing that because, you know, you might feel that you're able to make more progress that way, or you feel like you're maybe more optimal that way. And if that's the case, then that's good for you. But again, it's a lot of it comes down to your sort of psyche and what is going to be beneficial for that individual. Because often we'll say that something is more or less optimal, but then, you know, it's got to be dependent on that person. What might be more or less optimal for me might be different for you. So like for me, it might be more optimal to follow a rigid meal plan. For someone else, it might be more optimal to follow if it fits your macros.
Yeah. So now, what do you prefer, meal plan or macros?
Well, obviously, I was doing it
in our off season. IFYM. Can't say it. IFYM. So
did you,
off season.
how strict though? Like to the point where every meal you just had what you wanted and fit it in, or it was like I bet you still had a plan and then it was just every now and again.
Did you eat the same foods daily still?
Yeah, I still like.
So you had your own meal plan that you made regarding your macros.
Yeah, but I could change things.
Yeah, if you wanted to change the rice to pasta or whatever, then.
Yeah, like if I fancy something else, then I could do that.
That makes sense. I like the idea of that. I just think like I'd struggle to get in the exact same amount.
I'd say that, but then also I know what you mean. But then also, if you think like, for example, like in your off season, let's say you ran out of Cocoa Pops, but you had Frosties, you wouldn't be like, no. Like I think you can manage it. I think again, there's levels to it. I think you can. If it fits your macros, it is on a scale. Like there's not just like one or the other. It's not like yes or no to it. There's
I think the original iteration was literally like you can fit in anything. Eat
loads of shit and make sure.
You had people like dieting on ice cream and such, and like they were like, oh, if it fits your macros, bro. Like that became a bit of a running meme like 5 years ago. And I do understand the rationale. Like, mate, when I've been in gaining phase in the past, if I'm out and it's a lunchtime and there's a burrito place or there's a Subway, I'll be like, right, let's have a look at the macros. I'll be able to have that inside of meal.
You can easily get like 40 protein and decent amount of carbs.
Yeah, and I'll go from there. But like, I've always just stuck to like the same meals, the same sort of times. And I've kind of like just gone off that, and I've not been like, oh my God, my M5's out. Instead of having rice, and have a donut instead now. Like I've never been like kind of like making swaps like that. But yeah, I like the thought of it. Macros are macros.
For me, like it adds more stress.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I mean.
If I was to be like, oh, I want to change this meal, but I need to make sure it fits my macros, and then I'd be looking at my other meals about what do I need to drop from this meal, and then I need to change this meal. Like for me, it's just more hassle than it's worth.
Yeah.
But for other people, it's not, which is fun.
Yeah. That's why I did it in my office.
Yeah, where Sanaya currently is following a very strict meal prep of about 400 calories per day.
I'm not being funny, but I mean, if Sanaya wants to be part of the podcast, then might as well just get her on her own screen.
Yeah, we'll get a third screen up, and she can talk about her.
Have to add it to the thumbnail. Add it to the thumbnail in the corner.
Yeah, that's what it'll be. Yeah, well, can we get her doing this one? That front like bicep one. This one. That's what we'll do. With the hands. Yeah, that's what.
That's what you're gonna have to do, mate. You can't take the piss. You have to do that.
I know, but I'm gonna do it as the last minute. I'm going like this, and then like the second I get into the pose, I'm like, because I'm not going into it with my hands like this. No chance. It's the same as the side shots. Like I'm gonna have to read the rules. I think you have to have your hands open. But I'm gonna go with like the fists, and then when they need to open, I'll open them. But I'm gonna be like, motherfuckers, why can't I pose like that? Like this is shit.
Every pose. Number 21, please open your fists. All right, every time. Have to be told off.
Yeah, I know. And I'm like, right, fucking hell, cheers, thanks guys. And they're gonna say, yeah, you know what? You could have won, but you weren't opening your fists. Imagine that. That'd be hilarious. That'd be
frustrating.
Yeah, would be. But either way, like I said, all good. Right, that's it. That's all good for you, isn't it? Yeah, questions wise, spot on. So episode 16 of the Once You're In podcast. Thanks again, guys, for all the story tags, all the comments, the questions, and then likewise the fantastic listeners who get all the way to the end on Spotify, Apple, which is actually on Apple, I'm not too sure, and then YouTube. It's a bit of a ball ache with Apple.
Apple is a ball ache. I don't think it is on there. It might be.
Yeah, you know what? Shout out to Spotify. Easy as anything. Shout out to YouTube. Easy. Apple, nah, not a fan. So yeah, other than that, again, appreciate you guys for listening. If you have any further questions, feel free. Every Tuesday we get onto this, so always ask us questions. We put them up on our Instagram, so that's Finn Kelly Coach and then Reece Fit. So if you want any of your questions or topics covered in the next few podcasts, feel free to ask them on the following Tuesdays. But other than that, again, appreciate you guys for listening. I'll catch you in the next one.